I'm not going to do after Ashkenazi.
I have a song too, so after Ashkenazi.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Good idea.
La 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 la. I la 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 I la 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 I la 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 I la 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 Hi la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav b'mitzvotav Vitzivanu lehadlik ner Vitzivanu lehadlik ner Vitzivanu lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat La 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 la
Shabbat Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. In case you didn't know, this was the week of our elections. Democracy in action, the nation has spoken. Our task is the same it's always been, to bring light into our world, more understanding, more wisdom, to serve. And tonight is about celebrating and honoring those who served our nation and other nations, the Jewish nation, their spirit, their sacrifice, to remember and to honor. Thank you to John Donlin, as always, for helping organize the beautiful display behind us and making sure we do this. Let us begin our Kabbalat Shabbat service with Shalom Aleichem. We're on page 5.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Yasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Baruchuni leshalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Tzedechem leshalom, Malachi Shalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We turn to our Psalms, beginning on page 11 with Psalm 95. Lichuneranena, 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 ladonai. Lichuneranena, 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 ladonai. Naria, naria, letzuri shenu, nikad mafanav bitoda. Naria, naria, letzuri shenu, Bizmerot naria lo, lechuneranena, 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 ladonai, lechuneranena, 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 ladonai. The end of page 12. Arba'im shana kod bedor va'omaram to'e levavhem vehem lo yadu derachai asher nishbati v'yapim yivon el menuchati. Lai 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 lai. Page 13. Shiru ladonai shir chadash, shiru ladonai kol haaretz, shiru ladonai baruchu shemo, pasru miyom liyom yeshuato. Apru hagoyim kivodo bechol ha'amim nifleotav kegadol Adonai umeulal meod norahu al kol Elohim כי כל אלוהי העמים אלים ואדוני שמיים עשה עוד וידע לפניו עוז ותפארת במקדשו הבו לאדוני משפחות העמים הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז הבו לאדוני כבוד shemo seu mincha uvol chatzrotav ay lay 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 Oh. La 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 ay 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 lay 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 la lay ay lay 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 ay lay 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 ay lay 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 לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק וימים באמונתו. On page 15, אדוני מלך תגל הארץ, ישמחו עם רבים.
On the left-hand side of page 15, Adonai reigns, that the earth be glad, and many distant lands rejoice. Flashes of lightning illumine the land, the earth watches and trembles, mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth.
אור זרו על הצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה, שמחו צדיקים באדוני, ויודו לזכר קודשו. Page 17, מזמור. מזמור שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה. הושיע לו ימינו וזרוע קודשו, די אדוני ישועתו, לעיני הגויים גילה צדקתו, זכר חסדו ואמונתו, לבית ישראל ראו כל עשי ארץ את ישועת אלוהינו, הריעו לאדוני כל הארץ, פיצחו ורננו וזמרו, זמרו לאדוני בכינור, בכינור וכל זמרת, בחצוצרות וכל שופר, הריעו לבני המלך אדוני, ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושביו, נרות ימחאו כף, יחד הרים ירננו, לפני אדוני קיבה, לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, וימים במישרים. אלי 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 Adonai malach yirgezu amim, Yoshev kiruvim tanut haaretz. 19. Moshe v'Aaron. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו.
Please rise, we turn to Mizmor LeDavid Havu Adonai B'nei Elim, page 21. Psalm about the voice of Adonai thundering over the waters with all the majesty, with all his power, shattering cedars, but also blessing us with peace. Page 21.
מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בני אלים. Havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, Havu l'Adonai kivod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai bi'adra kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod irim, Adonai al mayim, מים רבים, כל אדוני הכוח, כל אדוני ביד ההר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים וישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון וירא כלים כמו עגל לבנון וסיריון כמו בן ראמים. כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מבר קדש, כל אדוני יכול לעלות ויחשוף יערות ובכלו כולו מרכבות. אדוני למבול ישב וישב, אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך רמו ושלום. איי לי 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 איי לי 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 לי.
Please be seated. We turn to page 23, Lecha Dodi, when the Shabbat bride comes to give us the peace of Shabbat.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. 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 שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה קומיצי, מתוך הפך הרב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלי חמלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התנערים מעפר מלבשי בגדי תפארתך, מעל יד בן ישי בית הלך, מקרבה אל נפשי גאלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי כבעורף, קומי אורי אורי אורי, שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקל ממה תשתחקי, ומטעמי בך יחסו עניי עמי, ונבנתה עיר אל תהילה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Let's go directly to the last stanza. On page 25, we rise and we face the entrance, for here she is, the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, toch amunei segula, boi chala, boi chala. Let's sing the chain. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Shem sich nit. Geh mal rein.
Turn to page 39, our Baruch Hu, page 39a.
Baruchu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach leolam va'ed.
Please be seated. We turn to a responsive reading in the far left column of page 39a. Beloved are you, eternal God, by whose design the evening falls, by whose command dimensions open up and eons pass away and stars spin in their orbits. In rising sun and in spreading dusk, Creator of all, you are made manifest. Beloved are you, Adonai, for this hour of nightfall.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הרבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת. The last 5 lines. Ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu uvehem negei yomam v'layla. Ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu uvehem negei yomam v'layla. V'yavatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך, בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. Impress these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and as a symbol above your eyes. Teach them to your children by speaking of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on your way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your home and on your gates. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor. חרי לבבכם, חרי עיניכם, למען תזכרו בסדר. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We have a responsive reading on page 43b. You proclaimed the covenant on the seventh day.
You declared it and decreed it. We listened and heard it.
We love this day. We inherited delighting in its remembrance.
And began its command with the word, remember, Zachor.
From the time you bestowed it, joy filled the hearts of Yeshurun, the people you redeemed.
Securing the cause of righteousness, you exalted.
Shabbat as a sign between us forever. In 6 days your world was formed. On the seventh day you rested. To honor your name, they sing songs of praise to the one deserving of praise.
Page 44. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה נורא תהילות אוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה ליאנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Before we continue on with our service, our tradition has been over the past years, when we come to this prayer, Hashkivenu, a prayer of protection, prayer for peace, before the prayer is when we have our moments of remembering those in our lives who served. And what we've done is go around our space and invite anyone who would like to share a few words about a veteran, about their own service or someone in their family. If you've already mentioned it other years and don't feel like sharing it again to this year, you could also just mention the names of all the veterans in your family, or that you would just say their name, their service, if you like to, the war that they, or the time period that they served during. So I'm going to come around with the microphone. Put up your hand if you'd like to share a few words about someone in your life.
This will take a couple minutes. Okay. Better off there. My father, Henry Belenky, served
in the Army from 1943 to 1945. He was in the Pacific Theater. And during those 2 years, he sent letters to my mother. My mom saved everything, and she saved those letters. And they've been sitting in a box.
Come use this one. This one's a bit louder. Try this one.
They've been sitting in a box for many years, and this past year I finally broke into the box and started reading some of the letters, which has been fun to hear my dad's voice, because I don't remember him ever writing a letter in his life, but he wrote these letters to my mom. Anyway, I copied this from one of the early letters. He was in boot camp at Camp Robinson in Arkansas. You say that you read about the president coming to our camp. So let me tell you what happened in that account. Saturday, the 10th, after dinner, we were called out for drill. Then the captain came around and picked out several men from our platoon, and I was one. At first I thought I did something wrong, but then we were told that we were guards of honor, and for who he did not say. Well, we practiced that day and were told to get up at 5:30 Sunday morning. That I did, and ate my breakfast and started out for my post. I noticed a machine gun and a soldier on a roof with a gun. Finally, I came to my post and stood around until 10 a.m. when I was told to come to attention, and as I looked out of the corner of my eye, I saw armored cars coming. Then one car stopped in front of me, and I looked down and I saw Roosevelt. He looked at me right in the eyes and started to smile. That was the biggest surprise I ever had. In a few minutes, he drove away, and I still was dazed. I guess that is enough of anyway, that's a story. So I looked it up to see, okay, is there anything online about it? And I found a photo of that day. And so I will assume that one of those soldiers standing at attention was my father.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I don't have any stories, but my father served in Korea. He was in the United States Marine Corps, and he flew in a fighter squadron out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and then later is in reserves in a squadron out of New Orleans. I did have a little bit of a Roosevelt story. My father, when he was in boarding school, Eleanor Roosevelt visited, and he got to shake her hand, and then he told his father, and his father said, "Did you wash it afterwards?" My youngest brother served in the U.S. Army for 29 years, 11 or 12 of those years in the 5th Special Forces Group out of Fort Campbell, and then later in intelligence and foreign service. But he served in Operation Just Cause in Panama, the first Gulf War, and then in Somalia, and then as Special Forces do in places that we never knew about and are probably never going to know about, and then served as at an intelligence desk in the early years of the war in Afghanistan, and then as a defense attaché in Africa, and eventually as a command over Africa. His son is now in his 3rd year at West Point.
Thank you for sharing.
I'll go there. In my family, military tradition was very strong because first, as you know, I'm from Russia, and during the Second World War, Soviet Army was very active and ally with the United States, and was one of the decisive factors in taking the victory over Hitler. So two of my uncles, Uncle Mendel and another I forgot, they on my mother's side, they were pilots and they were killed in the actions. Then my father, he was a quartermaster and he was in the Soviet Army. He was a professional officer, and he was in the army from 1931 to 1945. And in 1945, my mom and me and my brother came to him when he was in Karelia. And then I was in the army. I graduated medical school, so I spent altogether, because they trained us as surgeons of the military time. And now we are coming to this country, and now my son spent 8 years in the army altogether, 3 years at active duty and 7 and the rest as a reserve. And he was a lieutenant. And now the greatest surprise was that my daughter-in-law, she is a trauma surgeon, and she volunteered to be in the United States Army. Now she is a lieutenant colonel, and she is in the military, in the medical service. So, long live American Army.
Thank you. Thank you. Lou.
Both of my parents served during World War II. My mother, Ruth Berger, was in the Army Nurse Corps, and she served on a hospital train based out of both France and Belgium. And she was in Patton's unit and served in the Battle of the Bulge. Her assignment on that train was to treat the wounded in the war, both US soldiers, allies, and also the enemies. Captured soldiers who were wounded were brought up on that train, and they were also treated. And she was actually serving in the middle of battle. This train was this hospital train was actually converted cattle cars and served as a hospital train. And they were in the middle of battle, and it was amazing the stories that she told, that when asked if she was scared, she said, no, I had a job to do. And she said she didn't know better, but she knew better. But being scared wasn't going to help anybody. She also partook in the liberation of the concentration camps and told stories there which were just heartbreaking. So she served, and she never really, she downplayed her role in the war, but what she did was absolutely amazing. My father also served in World War II. He was a sergeant in the US Army, and he was, after going through training stateside, he was eventually assigned to be in the Battle of Japan. However, obviously that battle never occurred because of the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So he was then assigned to the Philippines, where he drove a truck, and it was basically mop-up duty at that time. So that's the story of my parents. Both served honorably, and I am very proud.
Thank you for sharing.
I know. Okay, should I go there? Okay. My son, our son Danny, is in the U.S. Marines, and he's been in for 10 years. And right now he's deployed. He was in the Philippines, and he's going into Indonesia and Singapore. He is training the Marines there. And before his deployment, he gave his, to a draw that he's going to be leaving the Marines after his deployment. And then he got a note, because they wanted to send him now to, was it colonel school? Or some lieutenant colonel school. So I don't know what he's going to do now, if he's really going to leave the Marines. So I just wanted to share that with you.
My father, Leon Figa, was born in 1919 and in his early 20s. He fought in the forests of Belarus. He was a partisan, Jewish partisan, and to honor him and the other partisans and the veterans and the fighters that fought from the East, I'll sing this song. I have the translation there. You may have picked it up on the way in. If not, it's on that stand there. It's a poem put to music which tells of the first victory of the partisans over the Germans. Still, die Nacht ist ausgesternt und der Frost hat stark gebrennt. Sie gedenkst du, wie ich hab dich gelernt. Halt na Speier in die Hand. Sie gedenkst du, wie ich hab dich gelernt. Halt na Speier in die Hand. A Moid, a Pelzel und a Beret und halt in Hand fest an a Gan. A Moid mit a sammetenen Punem, hitop dem Säunes Karawan. A Moid mit a sammetenen Punem, hitop dem Säunes Karawan. Gezielt, geschossen und getroffen, oh, der kleine Kerpistol, an Otto a Fulken mit Waffen, verhalten hat sie mit ein Keul, an Otto a Fulken mit Waffen, verhalten hat sie mit ein Keul. Vertog von Wald heraus gekrochen, mit Schnee gelanden auf die Hohr, gemutigt von kleineken Nitzochen, vor unser nahem freien Dor, gemutigt von kleineken Nitzochen, vor unser nahem freien Dor.
I thought this year we should also mention that with the war in Israel happening, there have been a lot of veterans who've had to go back into active duty. In Israel, I'm not sure when you're considered a veteran because you do your reserves till you're you're 55, 60, you go back into your active reserve duty once a year. But on my mind this year has been one of my best friends, Guido Cohen, who signed my ketubah. And he's 47 years old, and when October 7th happened, he went up to the border of Lebanon. He thought only for a few weeks, but he's been there on and off for the whole year. In the midst of that, his third child was born to him. Hasn't been able to do any of his personal work. He's in the high-tech business. But I'm not sure how many of you have been paying attention, but once the war in Lebanon started with ground troops about a month ago, there started to be a lot more soldiers who were dying in Lebanon. And if you looked at the picture of them, every time they showed the pictures, 4 or 5 soldiers dead, 4 or 5 soldiers dead. Looked at a picture of them, and a lot of them had gray in their beards and looked older, like they shouldn't be soldiers anymore. And a lot of the soldiers in Lebanon are reservists, and they're 40 years old or up. I saw a picture last week of a grandfather in uniform with his son and his grandson, all serving at the same time. That's the need that's over there. And the truth is that there have been a lot of soldiers who've passed away, especially religious soldiers. And I was struck by one of them, whom was a rabbi in Jerusalem, and part of a community, of modern Orthodox community, and he was beloved. And he was one of many in a period of a few weeks of that world who died in combat. So I want to share with you just a few short words from one of my favorite authors in Israel, Rachel Sharansky, who's the daughter of Nathan Sharansky. And she wrote about this local teacher, Rabbi Avi Goldberg, and she wrote an article, eulogy. And so she recalled earlier in the war, it was late at night, I was walking home from one engagement or another, weighed down by the war, the losses abounding around us, the daily grind. I was reading the news on the phone as I walked, but something made me look up, and there was Rabbi Avi, my neighbor and one of the pillars of my community, a man who led us in prayer, learning, music, and volunteer work countless times. Erev Tov, good evening, he said, and smiled before walking on. That was it, a 5-second long interaction, but it was enough. I felt rejuvenated. I put away my phone and my worries were suddenly eased. Being smiled up by Rav Avi was like basking in sunshine. How could I be sad or worried or distressed when Rav Avi looked at me with that beautiful light in his eyes? If to exchange smiles of Rav Avi was to be uplifted, to converse with him was to feel your lungs fill with air and your soul fill with renewed strength. Because Rav Avi looked at the world with so much clarity, so much love for the Jewish people and humanity, and such a keen awareness of the deep truths and stories that underlie our lives in Israel, that his perspective couldn't help make your doubts and concerns ebb away. During the 250 days he served in reserve duty this past year, my entire community sorely missed him and his ability to revive our spirits with a word, a smile, a glance. In this dark year filled with tragedy and loss, we needed his clarity of vision and his confidence. Skipping a little bit, somehow his confidence and faith that this hard time would lead us to a better future was powerful enough to reach us through pixels and sound waves, providing support for all who received his messages, even in the darkest of times. Who will raise us up now, when it is the loss of Rav Avi himself that darkens our world like an irrevocable eclipse? I wanted to share that in memory of all those Israeli soldiers who passed away in the last year. Mr. Donlan.
Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for coming to our annual. Oh, okay. And welcome to our annual Veterans Day Kabbalat Shabbat service. And our service commemorates military service of our members, families, and loved ones. And as you can see, it's grown again since last year. Again, our painting is of the Immortal Chaplains by Dudley G. Summers. and it comes to the bema for display. It was commissioned by the Silverman family in the early 1950s and dedicated on a very rainy night in February in 1955. According to Cantor Brindell, it was the largest crowd that was ever in West Suburban Temple, Har Zion, and there were even loudspeakers on the terrace so folks outside could hear the proceedings, which included a talk by the father of Reverend George Poling, one of the four chaplains. Our painting is considered one of the best depictions of interfaith in action. The four chaplains were last seen joined in prayer after handing their life jackets to others when the troop ship USS Dorchester was torpedoed by the Nazi U-boat U-223 off the coast of Newfoundland on February 3rd, 1943. Of the 933 men aboard the ship, approximately 200 survived the 34-degree water and 35-degree air temperature. For their bravery and selfless actions, the four chaplains, Father John Washington, 38, Newark, New Jersey, Reverend Clark Poling, 32, of Columbus, Ohio, Reverend George Fox, 41, of Lewiston, Pennsylvania, and Rabbi Alexander Good, 34, of Brooklyn, New York, were posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and Distinguished Service Cross medals. Rabbi Good was married to Teresa Flax, niece of entertainer Al Jolson, and had a daughter, Rosalie. There is an elementary school named after him where he worked before the war in York, Pennsylvania. A number of years ago, I tried contacting his wife, who remarried shortly after the war, and she had since passed away. His daughter, Rosalie, was killed in a car accident about 15 years ago. So she was, of course, I really tried to get a hold of her, and she was giving speeches or talks, when asked to do so, and she was in an area, but we missed on that one. Rosalie does have a daughter, there's a granddaughter, which I haven't contacted. But again, I thank you for attending and making this service an annual event, and it celebrates and honors us. And as you can see, all the pictures, on the panels up there, if during the year you have a person you would like to add to it, send me an email. I'll start with, it's three. I started with one panel, and it had just a few photos on it, and I had a bunch of photos of, from my family, and that was about it. And then all of a sudden, this thing just started to grow and grow and grow. So if you have someone you want to honor, don't be bashful. Send me an email, a picture of them, scan it, and tell me a little something about them, and I'll put them up on the display board. This celebrates us, folks. Nobody else is doing it. So thank you for coming, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Turn to Hashkivenu, our prayer of protection, peace in the night, page 45.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'yamidenu malkeinu lechayim, v'ros aleinu sukkah shalom. Ushmor tzetenu uvoenu lechaim ulshalom me'ata v'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'yamidenu malkeinu lechaim. V'ros aleinu sukkah shalomecha, baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukkah shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim.
Please rise.
V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה, ובזמן קריב אמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם עלל מעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו
Please rise for the Amidah, page 47. We continue silently, page 47 through to page 52.
Say shalom, shalom, shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen.
Please remain standing for Kiddush, page 55.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. Please be seated. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. My grandfather, who I never met, Henry Jones, whose picture is up there, he was a navigator during World War II, and he flew planes from Canada to the United Kingdom from 1940 onwards. And he has, if you look, he has a number of medals: Atlantic Star, Africa Star, Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, Air Observer's Badge. Anyhow, he later went on to become an attorney and a politician. He was actually a member of Parliament for Saskatchewan in Canada, in Ottawa. So he lived half the year in Ottawa, half the year in Saskatoon. And he once headed the Canadian NATO delegation to Paris. And I actually found out for the first time a few weeks ago that he was the parliamentary secretary for veteran affairs. So he was the second person in charge. And he was actually being groomed for great things. And people thought he could be a defense minister, maybe even prime minister of Canada, but he died young of cancer and never realized any of that. But anyway, I recently looked him up and found that the Parliament in Canada records all the speeches through all the years, and you can look up what people say and what he said, and a lot of it's quite boring. But what was interesting was that after he died, there were all the comments that were made in Parliament about him. And I was really struck by what they said and the tone of the political discourse in those years, how different it is than today. But everybody, so many people stood up to eulogize the honorable member of Parliament that he was, and that he was an up-and-coming politician with so much to give, but his life was cut short. And his contributions were not what they could have been. And at the time that he passed away, his party was not in power, the other party was in power. But from the other side of the aisle, people went out of their way to make these warm and polite, dignified comments about him, and beautiful tributes to his war service and condolences to his family. And so what it made me think of was how war, for everything that it is, and the spirit of service, really should elevate people to be their best selves, and to reach out across divides, and to be generous of spirit, even with those who on some level are enemies. And how war, in one sense, is really one of the ugliest parts of humanity and brings out the worst in us, the most basic, the most primitive, fear and hate and vengeance and killing. And it takes away a person's aspirations and ideals far too quickly. They suddenly disappear and brings destruction and death. And I thought of that this week with, I don't know if you followed the story, what happened in Amsterdam over the last day, where mobs were running after Israeli soccer players and attacking them in the most violent way possible. And that yet somehow, on the other hand, that serving one's country and serving others by putting one's life into danger on the line is so powerful and so beautiful. And we hope it doesn't have to happen, because when the dangers and losing so many people in the prime of their lives and leaving families devastated and relationships cut short and leaving our society without some of its brightest members, but somehow it also has the power in the midst of all that ugliness to force out the best of people and to transform the lives of those who are serving. And in our parsha this week, Abraham goes to war, and because his nephew Lot is kidnapped by some kings. Lot had settled in one of the most fertile areas at the time, but there's an alliance of kings against him. And so Abraham goes to war. Abraham, 75 years old, goes to war with his household, and he gets his nephew back. And in the end, he comes together with Melchizedek, who's a king of another kingdom who joined him, was an ally of Abraham. And at the end of it, they have this beautiful moment where they thank God, El Elyon, the highest God. I don't know who he worships, but they together, and they have their first kiddush. They share a little glass of wine, they say a little prayer, and they have this moment of recognition that God helped keep them alive amid all the horrors. And one of my favorite things to do over the past year of the war in Israel has been to look at the Facebook posts of a member of Knesset, no longer a member of Knesset, but once was Dov Lipman. He's a Haredi, ultra-Orthodox member of the Knesset, American-born, and he made it his mission to post inspiring stories from the war in Israel. And so just a few days ago, he posted a story of two brothers who were both spent almost the entire year in reserves, and not knowing it, suddenly met in Lebanon in a house and spent a few hours together and took a picture of it. Amazing. And one of my favorites, a video of a returning reservist who looks to be at least in his 30s, if not 40s, with a mustache and everything. And he comes up to a religious musician who's playing with a hat out in the streets of Jerusalem, an older Hasidic man. And he asks him, "Can I grab the microphone?" So he grabs the microphone and he starts to sing, and he has a beautiful voice. And he's singing the Psalms, "I lift my eyes up to the mountains, from where will my help come?" And he sings it with such feeling, and you can't help but think, what battle was he coming back from, that he went and took this microphone and started to sing this song of faith and devotion. A final story that was posted by Dov Lipman of a lone soldier from America. Maybe he wasn't from America, maybe he was from Argentina, I can't remember. Anyhow, he posts a post in Facebook, I'm looking for a used car when he's not on duty. And some couple came to him and gave him a car in gratitude for his service. Those kind of stories warm the hearts. And that's often in the midst of war, there's all these other things happening. My grandfather, when he was serving, once he was in the streets in Egypt, and he picked up 2 Shabbos candle sticks to give to a family member. And one of the stories he always told was of being in a pub after the war and also talking to someone who liberated the camps, and how powerful that was, and how beautiful service is, and sacrifice is noble, and it's the core of our humanity. It brings out the core of who we are. And to remember our loved ones who serve also reminds us of what it means to live with that nobility, how we can emulate them, even if it's not by going to war. We can walk in their ways and do our part to help all those who put their lives on the line. And to remember that the only way to respond to darkness in the world is to bring a little bit of light ourselves. Shabbat Shalom. We turn to Aleinu, please rise, page 56.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל עמונה. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך שהוא נוטה שמיים. אמת מלכים, ככתוב בתורתך. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad.
Please be seated. We turn to our Mourner's Kaddish, page 58. This week we are observing the following yard sites: Sophie Altschul, Sharon Bloom, Julia Cermak, Alvin Charnas, Barbara Clemens, Samuel Korish, David Fagel, Karen Bea Feldman, Albert Fox, Lone Frack, Bertha Flora Garcia, Andrianzen Fernandez, Ida Greenberg, Al Horberg, Abe Kaplan, Francis Koch, Beatrice Krieger, Isaac Lakin, Milton Miller, Hyman Nathan, Ruth Pevsner, Goldie Pielet, Albert David Rader, Joseph Rubinsky, Pearl Sachs, Jay Schlitt, Renee Seltzberg, Rabbi Sol Serber, Louis Steinfeld, Michael Tsessis, Fanny Wexler, Harry Zakroff. If you're observing a yard site or in mourning, please rise and join me in the words of the Kaddish on page 58. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'amei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitchumam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekudesha brichu Eila mikol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'mu amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'akol Yisrael v'mu amen. Oseh shalom b'imomav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'akol Yisrael v'imiru amen. Announcements from Jerry Bloom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Here are the announcements for this Friday, November 8th. Yasher Koach to John Donlin for yet again doing a lovely job of this veteran Shabbat. If you didn't get a picture of your beloved veteran into this year's service, please make a note to do so next year. It's a lovely tradition and we want to include everyone. As always, go to our website for other details and links for all scheduled programming. This weekend, tomorrow morning at 10:30, the junior congregation meets in the chapel and Tat Shabbat with Miss Jessie in the preschool. Come and see what our kids are doing. Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m., we are presenting A Day of Rest and Peace, an afternoon of the spiritual Jewish melodies of Shabbat. Come hear the Har Zion davening team and a selection of uplifting prayer, mystical chant, and perhaps some Hasidic dancing. Each selection will be introduced to help build spiritual connections to our traditions. Listen and learn about Jewish prayers from all over the world. On Sunday, November 17th, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., we are starting a new program called Common Conversations. These events are designed to give members a chance to discuss timely issues while getting to know each other. Our first session covers giving thanks at Thanksgiving. What are your traditions and conversations at the Thanksgiving table that show gratitude and give thanks? Come relax in the front foyer and have a nice schmooze. Consider applying for a leadership position on Har Zion's board, or sign up to join a committee. More people are needed to make things work smoothly. Nominations for board directors and officers are being accepted through Monday, December 9th. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, page 211, you'll find Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra liet nasa v'revtzo kol azai melech shimo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol livado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu over והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא אחד ואין שני לעם שלו להבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי ביצרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום אקרא בידו אבקיד רוחי בישן ויעירה במרוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא.
Please rise for a concluding bracha. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Holy One, blessed be He. Protect, watch over, and guide all the members of our armed forces and of Israel's armed forces. And guide and watch over all of our veterans. Bless them with good health and joy, that they should know our gratitude for their service. Bring peace and truth to our world, and let us say Amen.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך.
Adonai bless and watch over you.
יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך.
May Adonai's countenance shine upon you. May Adonai bestow kindness upon you.
יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
May Adonai's countenance be lifted towards you. May Adonai grant you peace. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shkoach, shkoach.